good. So chapter 20 is pretty long. So honestly, if we just get through 20 and 21, I'll be pretty happy. 22 might be rough to get through because they're all three like 30 to 50 verse chapters.
Yeah, okay. Noted.
So I'm okay with that. But if we have time, we might be able. 22 might be something we can go quicker through. We'll see.
All right.
But we'll probably spend a lot on 20 and 21. So before you hop in, this time I'd say probably just have someone recap last week. We probably don't need to really recap the entire book as usual. For the people online, they've been following. So maybe just have one of y'all recap last week.
So we got to see some parables about the people of Judah and just their sin. And the first parable was in chapter 17, and that was the parable of like the two eagles and a vine, right? So there's this first eagle. It plants it takes these branches off of the top of a tree, takes the seeds, plants them in the ground, basically nurtures this seed to grow into this amazing, beautiful vine. But then all of a sudden the second eagle shows up and the vine just ditches the first eagle that took care of it and starts growing towards the second eagle. And it basically represented how, a zoomed in approach is the idea that the Babylonians actually had plucked out some of the leaders of Judah and had provided for them and taken care of them. But despite all the Babylonians did for the people of Judah, they turned and started running towards Egypt for help in order to wage war against the Babylonians. And on a zoomed out perspective, it demonstrates how God had plucked Israel out of nowhere, had provided for them, had turned them into a nation, and they rebelled against him and turned towards other gods who had not provided, right? And so as a result of this, they're going to be judged, right? The Babylonians are going to judge them, and Yahweh is going to judge them, and blending the stories together, Yahweh is judging them through the Babylonians, right? And so that's kind of where they converge. But at the end, God does promise that one day in the future, he is going to return them, and he's going to restore the vine, and the vine will have an enduring kingdom that will never end. And so one day they will learn to respond to him well. You get to chapter 18, and that is where you can imagine some of the people of Judah responding and saying, whoa, why are we being judged for what our ancestors did in the past? Or why are we being judged for what our leaders did? And God responds and says, well, let me make it clear here. The soul that sins is the one that's going to be judged. Right? And so God's like, I am wise enough to discern who is guilty, who is innocent, and I am not going to condemn somebody for the sins of their parent or for the sins of another. I'm going to condemn you for your own sins. And so when you are judged, you can know that it is your own sin that brought this about. And then that leads into chapter 19, which is basically a big lament, where over the course of the chapter, it's a lament for the princes of the people, but there's two main images that were used, and the images were of a lion and a vine, unless I'm mistaken there.
No, you're right.
Is that correct? What we kind of talked about is that this imagery kind of calls back to Genesis 49, where Jacob is blessing his sons, and the imagery that he uses for Judah is that they are a lion and a lion's whelp, and they are going to be so prosperous that they can tie their donkeys to the vine. And this imagery is kind of brought back up again in regards to the people, to the leaders of Judah, and basically saying that they have failed to do what God has called them to do. And so they have not been good lions devouring the correct prey. They've been devouring themselves. And they have not been fruitful vines that have been producing good fruit. They have been desolate. And so that's kind of where, basically what we covered last week is just bookended by parables, and in the middle it's like, you're going to be judged for your own sin.
Yeah.
So
I've noticed in this book that we've been seeing exponentially more parables than every book before it. It kind of makes me think in the same way with Jesus, where as it got closer and closer to his death, he started speaking more and more in parables and hid the meaning behind stuff. And here we do see parables being explained, but we do see in general there is more confusion about what Ezekiel is saying, to where people they don't have ears that hear. And so there's probably something to that, to where as we go on, we're just going to see that we're getting closer and closer to Jerusalem's destruction, just like in Jesus' day.
And I think that there's two main reasons behind that. On one hand, you got Deuteronomy 32, where God says that when the people chase after other gods, one of the judgments is that he's going to hide his face from them. And so, if they have turned from him, he's going to turn from them. And so, the idea is that what was once very straightforward is going to become hidden. And that's what you see with Jesus too, right? At the beginning of his ministry, you get the Sermon on the Mount, which is one of the most straightforward sermons ever, right? He's just like, let me explain to you what the Torah meant and what I expect from my followers. But then, as people begin to reject him, he starts teaching in parables. A second reason is it ties into Ezekiel's purpose as like a watchman, right? We kind of alluded to this early on, but if his main job is to communicate to the people the danger that awaits them, it is in his best interest to do that in as various, with the greatest variety of ways possible, right? To where he can tell them straightforward, he can use various different stories, because he's basically leaving them with no excuse to not know that something bad is coming, right? He has acted it out. He has told them straightforward. He has explained their history. He has recounted their history in an allegorical form. He is now sharing various different parables. So he's basically just telling them the same message in a million different ways. So that whenever the judgment comes, they can't say they weren't warned about it, right? He is doing his job as a watchman, and he is just like laying it all out. And so I think that'd be like another reason why we see it a lot more here than previous prophets.
That's true. And just one other thing to keep like in the back of your head as we read on is that we've also been seeing this theme throughout of Ezekiel kind of functioning as like a second Moses, and there's been a lot of imagery going on of like Exodus imagery, and we're going to see more of that as we read on as well. But not to go too deep into that right now. But anything else you want to add before we just hop in? Okay. Read chapter 20. I'm not going to read the whole thing through. It's a lot of verses.
Right. Maybe.
I'm going to read until I decide to stop.
Nice.
Now it happened in the 7th year, in the 5th month, on the 10th of the month, that some of the elders of Israel came to inquire of Yahweh and sat before me. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the elders of Israel and say to them, Thus says Lord Yahweh, Do you come to inquire of me? As I live, declares Lord Yahweh, I will not be inquired of by you. Will you judge them? Will you judge them, Son of man? Make them know the abominations of their fathers, and say to them, Thus says Lord Yahweh, On the day when I chose Israel, and swore to the seed of the house of Jacob, and made myself known to them in the land of Egypt, when I swore to them, saying, I am Yahweh your God, on that day I swore to them, to bring them out from the land of Egypt into a land that I had selected for them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands. I said to them, Cast away, each of you, the detestable things of his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. But they rebelled against me, and were not willing to listen to me. Each one did not cast away the detestable things of their eyes, nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I said, I would pour out my wrath on them, to spend my anger against them in the midst of the land of Egypt. But I acted for the sake of my name, that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations among whom they lived, in whose sight I made myself known to them, by bringing them out of the land of Egypt. So I took them out of the land of Egypt and brought them into the wilderness. I gave them my statutes, and made them know my judgments, which, if a man does them, he will live by them. And I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my statutes, and they rejected my judgments, which, if a man does them, he will live by them. And my Sabbaths they greatly profaned. Then I said I would pour out my wrath on them in the wilderness, to completely destroy them. But I acted for the sake of my name, that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations, before whose sight I had brought them out. Also I swore to them in the wilderness, that I would not bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands, because they rejected my judgments, and as for my statutes, they did not walk in them. They even profaned my Sabbaths, for their heart continually walked after their idols. Yet my eye had pity on them, rather than bringing them to ruin. And I did not make of them a complete destruction in the wilderness. Stop there real quick. Okay, so what happens there?
Pretty brutal opening. So the elders try to reach out to God and inquire him. And God is like, no, I don't want to hear it. I'm done with you guys.
Basically, yeah. I was gonna add on to that and say something.
That's just
like,
pretty brutal to ask God for something, or ask his opinion on something, and then him be like, no, I don't want to hear from you.
I noticed that they at the beginning they call this the Son of Man over there. I don't think it's referring to Jesus because in my translation it's not capitalized.
Yeah, this is just a way that Ezekiel's referenced a lot.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so because you said that Ezekiel was a watchman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least acting like one. So maybe that's kind of how their way of saying that. Is that what you're?
So in verse 1 it just says that, like Ezekiel says that the elders of Israel come to him. They're trying to inquire of God, and then God talks to Ezekiel and says all of this.
I see.
Yeah.
And when does this take place?
In the 7th year, in the 5th month, on the 10th of the month.
So
Question is, when is that?
In the 7th
Very
year.
specific time.
So that would be. Are we going by the Jewish calendar or standard English?
Probably
calendar?
Jewish calendar.
So I would assume chapter 8 says in the 6th year, and it's like around the same month and day.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume this is just saying about a year after that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my guess. Because I think we've only seen 2 dates like that. There was the beginning, which had the 30th year.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that, whether it's like his age or the Jubilee, whatever. And it doesn't seem like this would be going back before that.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming this is the 7th year after he arrived in Babylon.
That would make sense.
I'm assuming it's the 7th year of his exile. So this would be like...
Oh, you know what? At some point, it said the 30th year, the 5th year of the exile.
Yeah.
So then 2 more years. So yeah.
And so I think we're like 2 years into his ministry at this point. So
Okay.
Yeah.
if he got to Babylon in 597 BC, I believe it is, this would be like 591, 590 BC ish. That's what I'm assuming.
I would assume so. Yeah. I forgot that it says that after the 30th year thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what the 7th year is referring to.
Always.
Just to like contextualize everything. So Ezekiel begins in the 5th year, and then he gets the vision where God takes him to Jerusalem at the temple. That whole thing, that's all in the 6th year. So this is a year after that. And yeah, so again, the elders of Israel come to Ezekiel and they ask to inquire of God. And wait, what does that mean? It's not a trick question.
They're just trying to seek God's opinion, seek guidance.
I honestly interpreted it as just questioning God. I could be wrong.
I think they're just simply asking God, like, what's going on? Why is this happening?
I think they're seeking guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I think this is funny, just because to me, this would call back to 1 Samuel,
Yeah.
when you have King Saul. And I looked it up. This is not the word. So there's different words for like ask or inquire.
Okay.
The word that we typically think of sometimes with inquire or ask is sha'al. And that's where actually we get the name Saul from.
Oh.
And a funny thing throughout Saul's story is that he doesn't make it a habit to ask of God. Like, so his name is Shaul, but he doesn't Shaul of God.
Yeah.
But this word is the word darash. But that word does show up in the Saul narrative as well. And it ironically shows up in the moment whenever Saul goes to inquire of God, and God responds and says, it's too late, basically.
Yeah.
So in the story, how it plays out is that if you remember at the end of Saul's life, he's going to battle with the Philistines, and he decides, I need to inquire of God, and God says like basically it says that God did not respond to him, and in that instance it is the word Shaul, like Shaul. So he went to Shaul of God, and God's like, it's too late. So then what he does is he says, seek for me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And that's the same word, darash. So basically, since God rejects him, he goes and seeks a medium instead, which kind of just reveals his heart, and it shows that he actually wasn't that committed to God. And so that's where he conjures up the ghosts of the prophet Samuel, and it's a really weird story.
Yeah.
But to me, it's interesting because that's kind of where it seems like the elders of Israel are at this point in the story, where they're going to inquire of God, and God's like, it's too late. I'm not going to help you out. So.
Yeah, that's what it made me think of too. Because at this point, I forget. Has there been the first two deportations yet, or has it just been one?
I'll look up when the second one was.
It may have been around this time. So it was like 597, like 593 maybe. But I would say, I don't know if that would be necessarily what's causing them to inquire of God at this point. But it's probably fair to say that they're asking for guidance, and it could be something regarding Jerusalem, or it could be just the current state of like the exiles, to where it's like, are they going to go back? What's going to happen to them? Mm-hmm. And how does God respond?
So a quick clarification. The first deportation was 605 BC. The second one was 597.
Okay, so both of them happened at this point.
Yeah. Well, depending on when we date this to. Like, if we're dating this from...
Fair.
Because Ezekiel most likely arrived in 605 BC. And so if this is the 7th year after that, this would be like the year before.
Oh, okay.
I guess. But if you're dating it from the second deportation, then yeah. But I'm not sure. Anyways, what was the question you asked?
Just how does God respond? I guess there's a long and short answer. But.
He basically says, you think you deserve an answer? And then he explains why they don't deserve an answer, and he basically just begins to recount their history.
Right.
And ironically, it's like, he's almost just retelling the early chapters of Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
Because in Deuteronomy, Moses is like, they're camped at the edge of the wilderness, and Moses knows he's about to die. And so he tells the people, before I die, I want to give you some parting lessons. And so, like, he recounts their history, and he says, here's how God saved you from Egypt, and here's what God's done for you in the wilderness. Don't be stupid. Don't disobey God. Live for Him when you get into the land. And that's basically what God is doing here. He's just, it's almost like, reiterating the same thing, but he's just pointing out all their failures the whole way.
Yeah. So the first instance he tells here, so he starts off by, he ends up listing off different like situations where he's like, when this happened, and like when this happened. What's like the first event that he talks about? Or situation?
On the day when he chose Israel, which I think might have been when Israel was first founded, I guess.
Well, it seems like this is whenever they're in Egypt. It says he made himself known to them in the land of Egypt. I swore to them, I am Yahweh your God.
Oh, I did. I just saw that the land of Egypt.
And so, I looked it up whenever you were reading it. It seems like this is like Exodus chapter 6.
Okay.
Like
this is like before the actual Exodus.
Yeah, before the plagues and everything. This is whenever Moses went down. He tells the people, God's going to reveal himself to you. I am Yahweh your God. I'm going to deliver you. And then, starting in the next chapter, all the plagues begin to unfold. Mm-hmm. And that's how God made himself known.
Yeah. And so what is God's request of the people? Because as you're going to see, like, we could probably go through this section, like, relatively quickly, maybe not. But you're going to see that the request he makes of them kind of change. But, like, I want to just explore that. What does he ask of the people at this point?
Get rid of all the idols.
It's a pretty simple matter. He just says, get rid of the detestable things of your eyes and the idols. So it's not even about like all these different laws. At this point, all he's asking of them is to, get rid of the idols and then, basically the desire of your eyes.
Yeah.
Which is sounding to me like a reference to Genesis 3 with the desire of the eyes is one of the things that caused Eve to eat from the fruit. I just had that idea in my mind.
That's true. Mm-hmm. And how do the Israelites, how do they perform?
Poor.
Well, quick question. Like in verse 7, whenever he says, cast away each of you the detestable things, is that a reference to the Ten Commandments? Like later on? Because in Exodus 20, he restates, I am Yahweh your God, cast away the idols. Is that a reference to that? Or did he also say that back in before
Oh, you said does that phrase pop up in the early chapters of Exodus?
Yeah. I was trying to figure out if what he's summarizing here spans the entire thing, like the entire Exodus event, to where it's like he's referencing when he first called them, but also all the way to Mount Sinai, or if it's just talking about that first event.
That is fair, because the second instance is the second instance, it's like outside of Egypt, but not the wilderness. Mm-hmm. So it could be that's like Sinai.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, because that's when he says he gives them their statutes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that was referring to like Sinai, and then
Yeah, I'll look it up just to see, but.
Okay. But yeah, either way, while he looks that up, how do the Israelites, like, how do they do? How well do they?
They rebelled against him and were not willing to listen, so that they didn't really obey that.
No.
They might not. I mean, they probably understood and they just didn't do it.
I mean, it didn't take them that long. Golden calf incident. Right?
Right.
So we don't know what this event is referring to, but because I don't think it's necessarily just an event, but it says they rebelled against me, and then what is it specifically that he says that they're not willing to do?
They did not give up the idols of Egypt.
To listen to him, to hear his voice.
Oh, that too. Yes.
But yeah, either way, they also didn't cast out the idols as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then how does God respond? What does God want to do at this point? Basically, we're going to see there's this kind of this cycle that goes on. And so right now we're in that first iteration. But how does
it says, I acted for the sake of my name, so it not be profaned in the sight of the nations, amongst whom they lived, in whose sight I made myself known. So basically, he says, I am Yahweh, get rid of the idols. They don't listen to him, but his goal is bigger than just them right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he isn't just making himself known to them, he's also making himself known to the nations.
Right.
And so for the sake of his name, he's still as faithful to them, even though they're not listening to him at this point.
Yeah.
And so that's where you do have the Exodus event. And I looked it up, that language doesn't directly show up anywhere in Torah. Like even like the words for detestable things, that doesn't show up until Deuteronomy. And the word for image or like idols there, it's a very unique word. It doesn't show up until I think like Leviticus.
Wow.
And so it seems like this is like a command that probably was like given to them, or even like maybe even traditionally associated with what God asked of them during the Exodus. But they didn't listen. He still went through with the whole Exodus, and I guess the implication is that they were still worshiping gods throughout all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really until they get through the Red Sea that they're finally like, Yahweh is the God of gods. Like it's like, they didn't really buy into it yet. Yet for the sake of his name, he still did it because he's focused on something bigger than just them.
For sure. So then we move on. So I took them out of Egypt and brought them to the wilderness. I gave them my statutes and made them know my judgments. I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign to them. So, like, what is this referring to, generally speaking? Most likely.
The Sabbath in particular, I believe is... I mean, I know what the Sabbath is. It's just like the day that you... I thought I knew what it was. The day you, like, get off from work to worship God. Is that what that is? Or is that, like...
Well, it's a little bigger than just that. But I mean, like, maybe I'm not phrasing the question right. But, like, so far we've talked about them in Egypt.
And now it's at Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
So basically this is when they arrive at Mount Sinai, he gives them the covenant. Right? So before Exodus, now we're at Mount Sinai, he gives them all these commandments. And then in addition to that, it says he gives them the Sabbath. Because what the Sabbath represents is their ability to rest from work and trust in him. And so that's why it says he gave them the Sabbath in order to sanctify them. Because to sanctify means to make them holy, to set them apart.
Yeah.
And so he is... Like, the whole concept of Sabbath, we gotta treat it like, it's just a day off. That's not quite what it is. Sean and I were actually talking about this on, like, our podcast, yesterday when we filmed it. But the modern understanding of Sabbath is the product of just, like, how easy we have it in life.
Yeah. To
where we like having days off because, like, we like to just be lazy and chill out. Whereas in an ancient culture... Whenever you did not have a refrigerator and electricity and indoor plumbing and stuff like that, taking a day off could be detrimental, right? Because you needed to like make sure that you were like working the field and producing food, because like you couldn't just like preserve your food for endless amounts of days and stuff like that. It's like you really needed your daily bread, and so to take a day off was a scary thing. And so a Sabbath is where you're choosing to deny yourself and place your trust in God.
Okay.
And so most nations could not afford to take a Sabbath, right? You have to work every day to provide. Whereas God said he was setting Israel apart by giving them the Sabbath so that they could take a day off, they could rest, and he would provide for them on that day to show that he cared for them. And so the idea is that the Torah was supposed to be like a gift to them, It was the way, like, he set them apart unto himself, but also was providing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what he did right there.
Yeah. I think also as you read through this, I just want to also like think about. So again, if you kind of just zoom out about what's going on in this chapter as a whole. So at this point, I mean, we've been reading this whole time, like, things have gotten worse, and at this point they have no excuse, right? But right here, God's taking time aside to basically break down exactly how little of an excuse they have. And so keep in mind that the first thing he said was, all he gave them was just get rid of the idols. And so they couldn't do that. And so he's like, okay. And so I would say that at this point, you could say that he is now giving them something to help them. Because he says, I also gave them my statutes, and I made them know my judgments, which if a man does them, he will live by them. So it's like he's giving them a cheat code, essentially. Yeah. I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies them. So it's like, you could almost argue, I mean you can't, but you could almost argue that before they didn't have a good enough excuse, like, oh, we didn't know what you wanted, God. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so I'll give you exactly what you need to be able to follow me. And so I give you the Sabbath as a sign between us, so you know that I'm the one who makes you holy. I'm going to give you this law so that you know exactly what you need to do to be like my holy people. And so, but at the same time, he's giving them less of an excuse, because now they know exactly what God expects of them.
Yeah. Because during the Exodus, you could argue, well, we didn't really know who Yahweh was, right? I mean, we just thought he was one amongst many gods. We didn't understand that, like, we actually had to listen. But then after the Exodus, they're like, okay, like,
well, he's the most powerful God.
Yeah, he's the most powerful God, so we should probably listen. And then he gives the Torah, and he explains, well, this is what I expect of you. Like, if you are my people, this is what you're going to do. And they agreed to that covenant.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, and so they can't do that either. And then so, again, how does God respond to this? To them not, like, following.
Okay, what verse is this?
Verse 14.
Okay.
But I acted for the sake of my name, that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations, before whose sight I brought them out. And so he still spares them. And, like, to me, this would bring to mind, like, Exodus 32 through 34, whenever Moses comes down with the covenant and the tablets, and they're worshiping a golden calf. And God is like, I'm going to destroy these people. They suck. But Moses says, God, remember your name and remember your covenant, and don't destroy the people. Because he says, like, what are the nations going to think? They're going to look and think that you brought these people out of the wilderness and couldn't keep them alive. And so he says, I know the people deserve to die, but remember your name. And so this is where God says, I remember my name. And so, once again, the reason he's sparing them is not because they deserve to be spared. It's simply because he's got plans much bigger than themselves, like than just Israel.
Yeah. So we read on.
Verse 15.
Also I swore to them in the wilderness that I would not bring them into the land which I had given them. So what is he referring to here?
The promised land. I know that the land that they were traveling to through the wilderness. And now beyond that, I think, I mean, if we've talked about this land a long time ago before, maybe even recently when I wasn't here, I think it has something to do with, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, they were claiming the land for themselves because nobody else took it yet. Is that what it was?
No, there were already people in the land. And they
that's right. I remember now.
I'm assuming what it's referring to here is that same event, right, with Moses and God? Where it's, like, because it says, I swore to them in the wilderness I would not bring them into the land I had given them. Is that referring to whenever God said that, like...
I guess it could be. So I
was thinking Moses's...
Or were you thinking later on with the spies?
I'm thinking later on because I would say that... I would say most likely 15 through 17 is, like, the same where, like, before it said, like, I was going to pour my wrath on them and destroy everybody, but I decided not to. But then here he says, I swore to them that I would not let any of them enter my rest because they rejected my judgments. But then he says, my eye had pity on them. And so he decided to not completely destroy them. And so I guess the answer to my question, or what I guess I was trying to ask was, this is, to me, I'm thinking about, like, the two generations, to where it's like, he ends up destroying the first generation, and then we end up with the children that goes into the land.
I was still kind of associating with the, where God said, I won't destroy the people, like to Moses back, like after the whole golden calf thing.
Yeah.
And then God says, okay, I'm not going to destroy the people, but I'm also not going to stay with them. Mm-hmm. He says, I'm going to send them into the land, but I'm not going to be the one who brings them in. I'm not going to go with them.
Yeah.
And Moses basically said, if you're not going, we're not going.
I guess that can go either way, because he doesn't bring them if he doesn't go with them, but also he doesn't bring them if they don't go at all. Yeah,
and so I guess your interpretation is probably the correct one, but it does work for both. Where it's like, basically, if anything, that reinforces God's point, is that there were several instances along the way where he could have destroyed them, but instead he has mercy on them. And instead of just totally demolishing them, instead he lets one generation die, and then the second generation he's going to bring in. So his eyes are having pity. And so that makes sense. How far was it that you read through?
That was all I read through. I was gonna go to the next part, but I guess I hadn't read that yet.
I think you read into like
through 17.
I thought it was until verse. Okay. Because I was trying to follow along.
Yeah, I probably should have read a little further initially, but
it's okay.
In that case, I'll just go ahead and read through 32, and then we'll talk.
All right.
So we left off with, assumingly, the first generation not entering the promised land. I said to the children in the wilderness, do not walk in the statutes of your fathers, and do not keep their judgments, and do not defile yourselves with their idols. I am Yahweh your God. Walk in my statutes, and keep my judgments, and do them. Keep my Sabbath holy, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am Yahweh your God. But the children rebelled against me. They did not walk in my statutes, nor were they careful to do my judgments, which, if a man does them, he will live by them. They profaned my Sabbaths. So I said I would pour out my wrath on them, to spend my anger against them in the wilderness. But I turned back my hand, and acted for the sake of my name, that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations, in whose sight I had brought them out. Also I swore to them in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the nations, and disperse them among the lands, because they had not done my judgments. But I rejected my statutes, and I profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were going after the idols of their fathers. And I also gave them statutes that were not good, and judgments by which they could not live. And I pronounced them unclean, because of their gifts, in that they caused all their firstborn to pass through the fire, so that I may make them desolate, in order that they may know that I am Yahweh. Therefore, Son of man, speak to the house of Israel, and say to them, thus says Lord Yahweh, yet in this your fathers have blasphemed me by acting unfaithfully against me. Indeed, I brought them into the land which I swore to give to them, and they saw every high hill and every leafy tree, and they offered there their sacrifices, and there they gave the provocation of their offering. There also they made their soothing aroma, and there they poured out their drink offerings. Then I said to them, what is this high place to which you are going? So its name is called Bama to this day. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus says Lord Yahweh, will you defile yourselves in the way of your fathers and play the harlot after their detestable things? And when you offer your gifts, when you cause your sons to pass through the fire, you are defiling yourselves with all your idols to this day. And shall I be inquired of you, O house of Israel? As I live, declares Lord Yahweh, I will not be inquired of by you. And what comes upon your spirit will not happen when you say, we will be like the nations, like the families of the lands, to minister to wood and stone. Okay, so we pick back up in verse 18. So again, zooming out a bit. First, in Egypt, he's just said, get rid of the idols. They couldn't even do that. So he's like, okay, I will give them a law to help them out. Yeah. That doesn't work. We get to the wilderness, and he decides that he's going to, not let the first generation enter, but now he has the second generation he talks to and says, okay, you have a law, and now you have the example of your fathers to look at. Yeah. So now they have even less excuse, because now they have physical evidence of what it looks like to not follow the law. Yeah. So they have the law which says do this and don't do this, and then they have people that did not follow it. So they have an example to look for to not follow.
Yeah, they have positive instruction and a negative example.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, here's what to do in the Torah, and here's the example of people not doing that. So basically, do the opposite of what your parents do.
Right.
And so, Yeah, he's just ideally just looking at it, he has given them no excuse. Like after the first thing, like after the Exodus, they already had no excuse to not listen.
Yeah.
Then they had less than no excuse, and now they have less than no excuse. Like it's just like he's removing all their excuses for disobedience, yet they're continuing to disobey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, God says that he was going to pour the wrath on them, but he decides not to. So he relents of destroying the people. Verse 23, what does he say there?
That he would scatter them among the nations and disperse them among the countries.
Because they hadn't obeyed his rule. Well,
Yeah, so this would be like, now we're fast forwarding, so the first of it was the Exodus. The second one is Mount Sinai. The third one is the first generation of the wilderness. And now we're at the second generation, to where they have rebelled, and now we're at the very end, like Moses' death, Deuteronomy, the very end, and this is like Deuteronomy 28.
Okay.
Where, if you go read the chapter, it's like, okay, if you obey, here's what's going to go well with you. And if you disobey, here are all the bad things God's going to do. And it seems like that's what he's referring to where like God literally spells it out. These are all the negative things that are going to take place. And earlier, before we started filming, we were discussing verses 25 and 26. I think there might be a much simpler explanation than people we'll talk about it in a second. But
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But yeah, so to me it seems like we're talking about the Deuteronomy 28 time period.
That would make sense. Can you or can someone briefly explain what you mean by Deuteronomy 28? Not in detail, but what's in Deuteronomy 28?
I think I just did explain it, right? With the blessings and curses.
Oh, I guess you did, yeah.
Yeah, with
pretty much.
if you obey, things are going to go well with you. If you disobey, here's all the bad things that are going to take place. And he is even if you just look at it with the section headings, you will see he is much more detailed about the bad things. Because first off, he expects them to disobey, and secondly, it's more he wants it to be more of a warning than anything else, right? To where the good things, it's okay, cool, yeah, good things will happen. The bad things are gonna he's trying to warn them so they don't do it.
Yeah. So now and again, the context of the end of Deuteronomy is that eventually Moses ends up having this song that he leaves the people of Israel with. It's like his last legacy, essentially. Yeah. And if you remember in the song, he says, I'm going to give you this song so that whenever things go down, you can look back and see that God predicted it would happen all along. And so by this point, they have even less excuse because they're literally having the future predicted for them right before their very eyes.
Yeah, so not only do they have the positive instruction of Torah, not only do they have the negative example of their parents, not only do they have the warning in Deuteronomy, but they also have their entire history foretold in Deuteronomy as well. Yeah. So it's there's all these different things that just are adding together to where it's guys. So it's again, less than no excuse.
Right. Yeah. Which kind of leads us into verses 25 and 26. I don't want to spend that much time on it, but it is they are weird verses, and if you look them up, people have lots of different weird interpretations of them. What do y'all think is going on here? It says, I also gave them statutes that were not good and judgments by which they could not live. We'll just read that verse.
That one might be what we just discussed regarding how, correct me if I'm wrong, the bad things that God said were going to happen to them if they did not obey Him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even considered that before, but as we're going through it, that kind of seems like that's a much easier way to read it.
That's what I was going to say. Is because before we were debating, because if you look into commentaries and stuff on this, people are debating what exactly is going on here? Because God says, I have given them statutes that are not good, and judgments that they cannot live by. And people are oh, what's going on here? But in context, it seems to make most sense if you just have Deuteronomy 28 in mind.
Exactly.
Because he gives them a statute, right? And the things that he spells out are not good.
I've given you life or death. Choose life that you may live.
Yes. Yeah, and the judgments are not life. And so it's quite literally I gave them statutes that were not good. It's not saying that was the ideal. He's just saying I put them there, right? To where it's if you disobey, not good things are going to happen, and the judgment is going to be not life. And so I feel that is the easier explanation. Whereas Like we were trying to figure if you just pluck the verses out of context, it makes it a lot harder to understand.
Yeah.
But it's funny because we were like over here like, what's going on? It's like it actually makes like if you just read through the whole thing
when I was
and
reading that,
if you look at like just the structure of it,
Yeah.
it's like it's clearly like Deuteronomy, like the final chapters of Deuteronomy make sense. Like these are not good statutes, not life judgments.
Context, it's important.
Yes, right.
And then verse 26, I pronounce them unclean because of their gifts, and that they caused all their firstborns to pass through the fire, so that I may make them desolate, in order that they might know that I am Yahweh. And that verse is a little bit weirder. And to be fair, fire isn't actually in the verse, but y'all have any thoughts on that verse?
I guess I will also say about this specific verse that it might have. I guess I am prepared. It might have to do with just I had it in mind actually, but let me read it again real quick unless somebody else wants to chime in.
So the word gifts here, like in general, it would seem like it's referring to like some sort of sacrifice, which is that would be why they insert the words "the fire." I don't know if everybody's translation does that. Technically, the text just says, "In that they caused all their firstborn to pass through, so that I might make them desolate." But the word "gifts" is the idea of like them offering a gift to God, and so it seems to me that there is like a sense of irony going on here, to where God is going to judge them with the not good statutes and the not living, like the not life judgments, because of what they did, and it ties into stuff that is predicted in Deuteronomy 28. In Deuteronomy 28, like he talks about like them like passing their children through the fire and like eventually judgment being so severe that they're eating their kids and stuff like that. And it seems like what this is referring to is child sacrifice.
Okay.
But the language, we were talking about this before we started the Bible study. The language calls back to Exodus 13, where God did ask them to consecrate the firstborns to Him.
Right.
And like basically, if you remember the Exodus event, all the firstborns of Egypt died. That was the final plague. And the way the firstborns of Israel were spared was by the sacrificing of the Passover lamb, the painting of the blood over the doorpost, all that stuff. That's why God passed over. And so as a result of that, God said, since I spared the firstborn Israelite, well, now that Hebrew boy, he belongs to me. And so he says, you should devote your kids to me. And people debate about what that means. And there are even some people who argue that God is talking about child sacrifice in that moment. However, if you fast forward to the book of Numbers, God changes things a bit, and he says, you know what, instead of the firstborns, basically whenever they do a census of the people, the number of firstborn Israelites and the number of Levites is roughly the same. So he says, instead of you devoting your firstborn children to me, devote the Levites to me. And it's made very clear that he does not want them to sacrifice the Levites. He wants the Levites to become priests. And so I think what's going on here is that God might even be like, ironically, like playing on the fact that the language of consecration is ambiguous. Because technically he did say, like cause your firstborns to pass through to me. What he meant is they're going to be priests.
Yeah.
But the language could be interpreted as sacrifice your kids. Because there's other places where he says, like in that same passage, cause your animals to be given to me. And he does mean sacrifice in that instance, right?
Yep.
And so we know that God does not demand child sacrifice. But I think what he's doing here is he's condemning them and he's showing that they still don't know him. Right? To where they are treating him like a pagan god. And so they are giving him gifts of child sacrifice, which is something that he doesn't even want. And so the language calls back to something he did request of them during the Exodus event, but they still don't get it. And so I'm thinking that maybe this is like how he's bringing the story full circle.
Yeah. Because
the first thing that he charged against them is set aside all the idols and worship me. And that was during the Exodus. And they did not do it. And so now you fast forward to the end right here, and he says, we are so far away from the Exodus, and you still are treating me like one of the idols, right? You're treating me like a pagan god. And so I think that's kind of like what's going on there, to where
Yes.
it's like it's an intentional callback to Exodus 13, and he's saying, you misinterpreted what I asked you because you refused to view me as something other than a pagan god. Does that make sense?
I
Yeah.
believe that.
Like that's like my current theory in regards to making sense of what is happening on there.
I think that might actually be true, to be honest.
Just because he says, I pronounce them unclean because of their gifts, right? They're giving him gifts, but they're not gifts that make them clean. Whereas, like, the whole idea with the priest is that they're supposed to be extra clean, right?
Yeah.
Nothing unclean goes into the tabernacle.
Mm-hmm.
But he says the gifts they were offering were unclean gifts.
Yeah.
And then he says, in that they caused their firstborn to pass through so that I might make them desolate. So it's like, the firstborns were supposed to pass through to him so that he didn't destroy them, right? That was the whole point of the Passover, right? It was, the firstborns belong to me. Now there's going to be a priesthood. I'm not going to destroy you because the priests are going to be offering these sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, they caused the firstborns to pass through to him in the pagan sense. And therefore, the gifts they gave him were not for life, but for death. And so the very gifts they gave are the reason why they're going to be destroyed.
I just had a thought in my head. Another Genesis callback, it seems, that I just had in my head. The story of Cain and Abel, you know how Cain's gift versus Abel's gift to God?
Uh-huh.
Well, that kind of might be a similar situation to this, if you think about it, because I'm sure you know the story, like, off the top of your head.
Yeah, that's possible. But to me, it also makes sense of the final part of that verse, where it says, in order that they might know that I am Yahweh, because that calls back to, again, that first thing, right? In the passage, like in the Exodus, he said, I am Yahweh. And the idea is that even after all this time, they still don't know who he is.
Right.
And so he says, okay, well, if you're going to give child sacrifice, you obviously still don't know me. And so I'm going to reward your gift with desolation, right? Because this is not a gift that earns you life. It's a gift that earns you death. And so I'm going to give you that death so that maybe you'll finally know who I am. And so, like, throughout all of this, he's, like, sparing them, but they're still not coming to know him.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I'm interpreting that currently.
Yeah, and I think that makes the most sense to me as well. Okay, so we can probably move on. So then what does he say? What does he say next to Ezekiel?
So basically it seems like this is where he's, like, getting to the present. So he says, therefore, son of man, speak to the house of Israel and say to them. So he's like, okay, now that we've gotten through, like, all the, he basically just walked through the whole Torah,
Yeah.
right? And now he says, say to the elders, right? Because the elders are the ones who started this whole conversation. Say to them, why are you still doing all the stupid stuff your ancestors did?
Right.
Yeah, and there's the imagery, I brought them into the land, and they saw every high hill and every leafy tree, and they offered there their sacrifices, and there they gave the provocation of their offering. They also made their soothing aroma, and there they poured out their drink offerings. So what's going on there?
Is it kind of a similar situation to the sacrifice situation that we looked at earlier, or is it a little bit different?
It's pretty much the same. So I would say it's probably kind of two sides of the same coin, to where so there is a sense of probably idolatry worship, to where they're probably worshiping other gods. But I would say there's also and I don't know if this is necessarily referring to, like, the Judges period, but as we read in Judges, people did what was right in their own eyes. I think there is a degree of both idol worship, but also false Yahweh worship, to where, like, for example, we had the story of Micah with the idol in the house, to where he wasn't worshiping a false god, but he was worshiping the wrong way. The idol was wrong, but they did other things to where they called it worshiping Yahweh, but they were doing it the wrong way, to where a lot of what's going on in the Torah, like the Levitical law and whatever, is how to properly worship. So it's not just about worshiping Yahweh, it's about worshiping Yahweh the right way. And we saw this throughout the entire Old Testament narrative, to where something between the golden calf or improperly handling the ark, those are all things where they had a certain way to do them. Some of these things aren't inherently bad, because as we're going to read in the back half of this chapter, there's going to be kind of this not reversal, but kind of there's like this reversal bit. Soothing aromas, drink offerings, sacrifices, those aren't bad things, but there's a certain way to do them, and you have to do them in the right place too. But the imagery here is that people are looking at these high places and these trees, and they're doing worshiping there and on their own terms. And so I think it's probably both idol worship and also improper worship.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
They're not letting, like, they're defining the religion that God alone defines.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where God's like, no, you have to worship me the way that I demand.
Right.
You can't just do it however you want. Which is also just an important thing for us to remember nowadays too. Like, there's a lot of people who, they'll say, oh, well, this is just my personal relationship with Jesus. It's like, that's not how that works. Like, you have to worship God on His terms.
Okay.
You can't just pick and choose, like, oh, well, I'm just going to do things my way, you do things your way. It's like, well, no. He gave us a standard. We need to worship Him in spirit and in truth. And it has to be His truth and His spirit. That just to bring it more application. But,
and again, the phrase in Judges that it makes me think of is there was no king in Israel, therefore everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And you can keep that like in the back of your head as we read on.
Okay.
And I'm assuming these verses span the entire history. Right?
I would assume so.
Just because the language in verse 28 also seems like it's almost like verbatim what we saw in like 2 Kings. Whenever it says that there were just like like high places on every hill and shrines under every tree and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it probably spans all the way from Judges up until right now.
Yeah.
Most likely. Just because it never really like completely went away.
Yeah.
But that's whenever it really got bad. And so how does this little section end here? He mentions a high place, and then what does he say? What's the last part here? He says to tell Israel. He mentions
And which verse is that in?
like 30 through 32.
Okay.
He says, "Are you going to keep doing the things that your ancestors did?"
Right.
Yeah.
And then this where he even brings up like the passing through the fire stuff.
Yeah.
And this time the fire is
Definitely. Yeah. And so therefore, what can they expect from God? Like, what does God say that they can expect to happen? That's like verse 32.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a question. Of course it is.
It's a pretty simple answer, but
He says, first off, he's not going to be inquired of them, and it
Yeah.
seems like he says he's going to make them like the other nations. And so basically, he's severing his ties with them.
Is it like him making them feel jealous of other nations, or is it something, or is it just them?
We're not quite there yet. It's not the jealousy. It's just the.
Okay.
He basically is saying, the only thing that made you special was me,
Right.
and you've rejected me consistently, and you look nothing like me, and therefore, you are no longer special.
yeah.
And I'm going to remove myself because like the only thing that was making them special is that he was continuously being gracious and attaching himself to them.
Yeah.
But he says, okay, one thing that made you unique is that I sent my prophets to you, but I'm not going to be inquired of you anymore. All right, so I'm going to cut myself off.
Yeah, like he's like divorcing them.
Yeah. This is like basic. Yeah, it's the divorce. Yeah, divorce decree.
Yeah. It's almost like when you're that sibling who people only call you like so and so's brother. It's like, or if it's like in this case, if it's like married, it's like Israel isn't Israel. It's Yahweh's wife.
Right. Yeah.
So if they get divorced, you can't call them that anymore. It's like, okay, well then they're basically nothing. Like what do you even call them?
Yeah.
They lose their identity entirely.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on this section? Okay. I will read through the rest of the chapter.
Alright.
As I live, declares Lord Yahweh, surely with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out, I shall be king over you. And I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you from the lands where you are scattered, with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm and wrath poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will enter into judgment with you face to face. As I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I will enter into judgment with you, declares Lord Yahweh. And I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. And I will purge from you the rebels and those who transgress against me. I will bring them out of the land where they sojourn, but they will not enter the land of Israel. Thus you will know that I am Yahweh. As for you, O house of Israel, thus says Lord Yahweh, go, serve every one his idols. But after this, you will surely listen to me, and my holy name you will profane no longer with your gifts and with your idols. For on my holy mountain, on the high mountain of Israel, declares Lord Yahweh, there the whole house of Israel, all of them, will serve me in the land. There I will accept them, and there I will seek your contributions and the choicest of your gifts, with all your holy things. As a soothing aroma, I will accept you when I bring you out from the peoples and gather you from the lands where you are scattered. And I will prove myself holy among you in the sight of the nations. And you will know that I am Yahweh, when I bring you onto the ground of Israel, into the land which I swore to your fathers. And there you will remember your ways and all your deeds with which you have defiled yourselves, and you will loathe yourselves to your own faces for all the evil things that you have done. Then you will know that I am Yahweh, when I have dealt with you for my name's sake, not according to your evil ways or according to your corrupt deeds, O house of Israel, declares Lord Yahweh. Actually, we'll stop there. The last section kind of bleeds into the next chapter.
Okay.
Okay, so what happens there? We'll just start in the first couple verses here. So, at this point, we have gotten basically to like the present history. But how does God start off here?
Starting in verse
33, 34.
Okay.
There should be some very familiar language there.
The language calls back to the Exodus, but he is talking about how he's going to send them off into exile and judge them there.
Yeah.
Specifically, I'm talking about like the strong hand and outstretched arm aspect calls back to the Exodus.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. He says he will be king over them.
I see the mighty hand and outstretched arm in my
cool.
translation being repeated like one time. So that's in verses 33 and 34.
Mm-hmm.
So verse 35 seems to be two things right there. One of which he said he will bring them out into the wilderness of the peoples, and then the second thing says that there he will contend with them face to face.
Mm-hmm.
Do people have different interpretations on that one? Because that sounds like something I would think they would have different interpretations on. Cause
You mean
the part where it says, "And there I will enter into judgment with you and contend with you face to face." I mean, besides the obvious idea that God is going to judge them, I just mean like the face to face part. Like, do they have any like meanings on that, or is that just they all get it?
Oh, you mean like with the face-to-face specifically?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm sure, I don't know, I mean, David might know, but I mean, like, the whole, like, metaphorical thing.
No, I think that no matter what, it's supposed to be imagery. Like, the idea is like,
that's what I mean.
Like, whenever the idea of being face-to-face with somebody in a fight is like, the idea is like, I'm going to show you who I am. Right? Like, basically God's like,
because I was wondering if anyone had any different ideas, but I think they all know.
Well, I think the idea is like, thus far, God has tried to help them know Him by His grace, right? He's like, I've been gracious to you, trying to help you know who I am, right? I wanted to make you know me through how I judged the Egyptians, and you didn't listen. I tried to help you know me through Torah, and you didn't listen. I tried to help you know me through judging, the first generation out of Egypt, and you didn't listen. I tried helping you know me through Deuteronomy and stuff. You didn't listen. I tried helping you know me through your history. You didn't listen. So now, I've been gracious long enough, and I'm going to help you know me face to face. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm gonna come punch you right in the face.
Yup.
Like just with this mighty hand outstretched arm, right? Like that. That's like the whole twist. Is that before the mighty hand and outstretched arm was being reached out to, like it was to deliver Israel and to punch the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Now it is
a reversal.
It's a little reversal to where he was freeing them from Egypt and bringing them to the land. Now he's freeing them from the land and taking them back to slavery. And so now it is like this: the mighty hand and outstretched arm is reaching out to punch the people and judge them and drag them out. And so and it's presented as like a reversal of the or I guess a repeat of the wilderness time period.
Yeah.
Just like the first generation died in the wilderness, he says, I'm bringing you back to the wilderness. And I'm going to judge you like I did them. And sure enough, they're going to be in Babylon for one generation, and the second generation will return.
Yeah,
right? And so,
that's true.
So basically, these people are the repeat, like the irony of it is that there has been a second Exodus, but instead of this being an Exodus from Egypt, it's been an Exodus from Israel. Mm-hmm. And so these are the people he's talking to. These are the elders who they were brought out of Israel. And he says, yes, and you're going to die in the wilderness, and your sons are going to return into the land. So basically, they are the new Moses like Ezekiel is the new Moses. He is speaking to them on behalf of God, and he says, you're going to die in the wilderness, and then one day a new Joshua is going to bring you back into the land. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I wonder who the new Joshua is. Did we already talk about him earlier?
No, and
not every metaphor has to be like a perfect one-to-one thing either.
Because in my head I thought it might be Jeremiah.
No, I wasn't trying to go too far with that. I was just...
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So then we get to verse 37. What's going on in verse 37? I'll make you pass under the rod, or the word is usually scepter, and it will bring you into the bond of the covenant. This is a weird word there for bond. It's like the word
to attach,
masereth.
maybe?
Masereth? Like it's kind of like the word maserate, but it only shows up in this one particular. It only shows up here, this one time. But it seems like it means bond. But if we're going along with the analogy of what's going on here,
maybe if I'm always like, I always have something to say this session, it seems. That's good. But I was thinking that they might. I thought the imagery that might best represent this in my head was just like them being like linked together, all going into the same land at once. Not literally, but just metaphorically. How it said like he will make them pass under the rod. So I think the rod is used to like lead them in. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm getting this right.
So
So
whenever I'm reading this, I think I have a couple things. One, within the text we've already read, he's already said, "I shall be king over you." And so here I would say that the rod / scepter is probably referring to that.
Yes,
I guess it can go.
okay.
I guess it depends. I mean, rod in general does mean discipline, whereas like scepter is more of like a authority thing.
Because I was probably thinking of something to do with discipline until you pointed out the king connection. So
I think that both work.
Yeah.
Right? Because the thing is, they have not been serving him as king. And therefore, I think the rod here, it would be both.
Yeah.
It is a scepter being used in judgment, right? He is their king who they have been rebelling against. And therefore, he is taking action to judge them. And that would tie into like the idea of like bond. Because, like you said, the word only shows up like once. It ties into a word that does show up, like it's etymologically derived from another word that shows up a lot in scripture that refers to like almost like a prison or confinement. But it does mean bond. It means just like the their
bond.
how do you even describe a bond? Like just like the
Kind of like prison doors, how they're like, you know, the way prison doors are structured.
Well, no, like bond here is like the like I guess the how do you even describe that? Like the I guess the relationship that they have via the covenant.
Yeah. Well, so what I was gonna say was my other thing was gonna be when you go back, we kind of like, at least the way I read this. One thing that we oftentimes forget with the Exodus story is that we oftentimes read it as God says, "Free my people, let my people go," like in this idea of like just freeing them from slavery. Whereas really, it's more like send my people away that they may worship me. And you'll see throughout the Exodus account that there's really the sense of like exchanging ownership to where God doesn't just simply free his people, it's like he purchases them. And so there's a verse in like somewhere in Exodus where it says like your children will ask you, what is this new slavery? And the idea is that the people of Israel don't really stop being slaves, they just are no longer slaves in Egypt, they're slaves to Yahweh in the wilderness. And so I would assume here that it has something to do with that, to where God is pulling them back in and he's bringing them back under his slavery.
Well, that's what I was trying to get to in regards to like just the idea of like why it's translated as bond, is that it ties into the relationship that they have, right? Like the bond of the covenant is literally the relationship that was established in the Torah, right? In Torah, God makes it clear, I am your king. Whenever they get out of Egypt, they declare Yahweh will reign forever. And then he gives them all these commands as their king. And so the idea is that, like I think that you can read this verse in both a sense of he is going to, as their king, he's going to bring them back under him, right? To where he is going to be the one who holds the scepter, and he is going to be the one who rules over them, and he is going to restore the bond of the covenant by, once again, sending them out from a land so that they can learn to worship him in the wilderness. But the way he's going to do that is through the negative sense of it. He's using his scepter as a rod of justice and judgment and discipline. And the bond here would tie into the idea of a prison, right? The idea of like prison bonds, where, because like I said, the word traces back to that. It's like a place of confinement. And so, according to the rules of the Torah, if they disobeyed, God would do this exact thing, and he explained the reason why he would do this is to bring them back to himself. Right? You go to Deuteronomy 32, he says, I'm going to let you be brought to like the brink of extinction, and when you have no strength left, you're going to call out to me, and I'm going to be there. Right? And so it's like, it seems like you can read that verse in both ways, to where it is through judgment, and through like the scepter of discipline, and through the bonds of like prison, he is bringing them back into a proper bond with him, and they are beginning to view him as a king again. Which then leads into the rest of the chapter.
Yeah. So then what happens next? What does he say he's going to do?
He's going to purge all the sinners from them, bring them back into the land, and then they will know that he is Yahweh.
Yeah.
So they're going to learn the lesson.
Yeah. And, I mean, if we're going along with like the extended like metaphor / analogy here, the way I'm reading this verse also is that he kind of words it to where it's being like the second, or like the first and second wilderness generations, to where he says, I will bring them out of the land where they are sojourn, but they will not enter the land of Israel. So it seems like it's kind of the same thing, to where like he's gonna like the people in the wilderness got taken out of Egypt, but they didn't enter the promised land. To where it's like these people are being out of the land they're sojourning, but they're not going to enter Israel, is what it seems like. So they're going to probably, I guess, I would assume, die in Babylon.
Yeah.
Is what it's talking about. And so this is like the second first generation of the wilderness.
Yeah. And we already talked about how that is like, you know, the first generation dies and the second generation moves on. We've already, yeah, so that's what that's referring to right there, you think? Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, and we're going to start seeing a little shift here, verse 40, but what happens in the next couple verses? For on my holy mountain, on the high mountain of Israel, there the whole house of Israel, all of them will serve me in the land.
Well, real quick question. Verse 39, is that supposed to be sarcasm?
Oh, sorry, I skipped 39 for some reason.
Yeah.
That seems like sarcasm to me.
Yeah, and I know we're not supposed to go like verse by verse through everything, but yeah, to where he's basically saying, after all this is done, you're going to start worshiping me, and so if you want to worship your idols, you only got a little bit longer left, so go get it done, right? Yeah. It's like, since y'all are so attached to idolatry, I just want to let you know you only have a few more minutes left to do it, basically, so go worship your idols while you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mean to skip that verse. My eyes just like...
Yeah, you're good. But then he says, I'm going to bring you back into the land. And it's also important that he doesn't give a strict timeline here.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, immediately when you return into the land, all these things are going to happen. He just says that in the future, this is going to happen. And I think there's going to be a short-term and a long-term fulfillment to this. Because whenever they get back into the land, idolatry will cease to be the predominant issue. But you're not going to see the full fulfillment of like the people being free from sin and everything being, perfect and stuff.
Yeah. So a couple things I want to kind of, a couple like words I want to think about here. In this back half here, I see the word accept popped up a lot, and then it gets this imagery again of like different sacrifices and offerings. To me, this seems to kind of contrast earlier to where. Some of it was just like outright bad stuff like child sacrifice, whereas some stuff may not have been like inherently bad, but the way they did it was wrong. And plus they were kind of doing it while being unfaithful. And as you read in like some of the prophets where God says like, your songs disgust me, where these people were not following God at all, but they were still giving lip service to where God said, I don't want to hear your songs anymore. I don't want your sacrifices. Whereas here we see there is this like kind of change to where it seems like by this point in the story, God is now accepting these offerings and these sacrifices to where they're now pleasing to Him. And another thing that has popped up again, which popped up a few chapters ago, is in where is it? Verses like 42 and 43, where it starts talking about remembering all the bad stuff you did, and you'll loathe yourselves to your own face. We saw this earlier in the whenever he talked about returning them to their returning their captivity, and that he would also return the captivity of like Sodom and Samaria. Really quickly, why do y'all think that this is in here? I know that's really the right question, but why do you think God has why do you think this is where it is in the text, to where it talks about them now offering sacrifices that seem to be pleasing to God, but then afterwards he starts talking about them feeling this shame?
Is it just saying that it's going to be accompanied by genuine repentance?
I would assume so. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get to the heart of so.
Yeah, because I know there's an order for why they appear the way they do, right? So, I mean, I don't have anything else to say on that, but just...
Yeah, it's not like a trick question or anything, but again,
Okay.
It's just something that it's worth talking about with the text here, which is trying to get to the heart of what the issue is here, to where, these people... Huh?
Let me see, actually. I mean, I think I might be close myself to...
Organization?
Well, when I was reading this, it made me think of Psalm 51, to where, David had sinned with Bathsheba, and then he had felt this remorse over his sin, and the whole thing was that he said, "Against you alone, God, I have sinned. I would give a sacrifice, but you don't want that.
Yeah.
A true the sacrifices of God are a contrite heart."
Yeah.
And then he talked about how please restore the joy of salvation to me. Sort of renew my spirits, and then I will teach the generation how to obey you, and then we'll give sacrifices that are pleasing to you. And I think there's a similar thing going on here, to where I think kind of inextricably tied to what's going on here is that the people will finally feel remorse over what they've done, and that will allow them to be able to repent and to offer right sacrifices. If that makes sense.
One, I think it also makes sense just because they're finally doing things according to how he demanded, right? And I think it's implied that, even if you didn't have those verses there, it would be implied that something had to change, because it's not that they didn't have these commands before. They just didn't care. Whereas now they know who he is. And now they're offering the sacrifices. And so the implication would be something took place, and people who, if they've gone through such a radical transformation, there had to be a metaphorical come to Jesus moment somewhere in between where they have come to realize we really screwed up in the past, because the whole point is that they haven't learned from their mistakes in the past. Whereas now the implication is that they have learned. And so there's got to be this legitimate loathing where they're like, oh, we screwed up and we are terrible and we need to change. Right?
Yeah.
So,
it's in the past, their failures kind of made them turn away from God, to where they almost got deeper into idolatry and turned to other nations, other gods, to where, in the Psalm, David says, "Against you alone have I sinned," and the idea is he is faithful to Yahweh alone. And the same thing here, to where at this point it's it's almost like idolatry is no longer going to be an issue, to where they're going to be faithful to Yahweh, and thus they will look back on those days and they will loathe those days, but that will allow them to move forward.
Yeah.
And so again, in the big context, there's kind of both the immediate fulfillment of when the people do return back to the land. Idolatry is not really a huge issue. There's other issues, of course, but at the same time, all of this stuff may not be truly fulfilled in the highest way. But yeah, what else? Anything else to add? Honestly, you could probably move on. The other thing is a very small thing, but when it says, "There I will seek your contributions and the choicest of your gifts," the word for choicest is first fruits, and it just kind of made me think it's not the same as the firstborns, but there is kind of the idea of they were giving the first fruits of themselves to other gods, to where now it's they're giving the first fruits of their offerings to God.
Yeah.
To where I don't know if that's even intentional, but I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, at the very least, the idea of him accepting the first fruits means that they're offering them, which is good. Like,
yeah,
it's like he's not accepting the secondhand stuff because that's not what they're offering anymore. They're offering the best of the best. And
yeah, and like the accepting thing, I had noticed when I was like perusing through Leviticus that the word accept pops up a lot. It's like there are some chapters where it's like every other verse has like accept, accept, accept,
Yeah.
and it made me even think of like with Cain and Abel you mentioned, where it's like
Right.
God says like, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? To where there's this idea of like giving a right sacrifice, God accepts. To where God didn't accept these old offerings, where they were either, offering them while, being unfaithful, or they were just simply like committing idolatry. To where now like they're on the right path, God is now accepting their worship.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to the last bit. So this last it's a weird chapter division, but basically the last 4 or 5 verses of this chapter kind of go into the next chapter. And what we're going to basically read, it's going to be different than the parable with the eagle and the vine, because here we're going to kind of read like a parable and then a second kind of parable that's like explaining it. It's going to be kind of weird, but really quickly, I'll just read these last few verses. We'll just try to quickly explain what is going on, and then we can move on to the next chapter.
All right.
Now the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face towards Teman and speak, dripping out words against the south, and prophesy against the forest land of the Negev, and say to the forest of the Negev, Hear the word of Yahweh. Thus says Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am about to kindle a fire in you, and it will consume every green tree in you, as well as every dry tree. The blazing flame will not be quenched, and the whole surface from south to north will be scorched by it. And all flesh will see that I, Yahweh, have made it burn. It shall not be quenched. Then I said, Ah, Lord Yahweh, they are saying of me, is he not just speaking parables? So that's a pretty short section. So keep in mind, later on he's going to kind of explain it, but what happens in this section here?
If I were to take a quick stab at it, maybe it's the future of the destruction of Jerusalem. I don't know if we've already read that or not. I don't know what time.
That's probably like the most general of what it's talking about, yeah.
I kind of see a pattern similar to Jesus' ministry in chapter 20. Just because he starts out very specific and general, kind of like Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, right? It's very direct, very simple. There's not a whole lot of breaking down to do, right? That you are my people, this is how I expect you to live, right? Not the same idea, but in terms of like ease of interpretation, it's very direct. And then he starts getting more complicated and speaking in parables as he goes, to where at the end, literally in verse 49, then I said, Ah, Lord, they're saying, of me is he not a maker of parables?
Yeah.
That's one just general theme I notice is,
yeah.
That's kind of like Jesus later in his ministry starts speaking in parables.
Yeah. Well, it is like kind of the opposite, to where like here he's speaking very broadly, to where like, I mean, I think they know what he's saying, but they're kind of like, please, like, it's not what we think it is, right? And then he's gonna kind of get more specific and more like direct with it. Keep in mind too, when it says Negev, it means south, so it it's because to me that was confusing at first, because I was thinking like a different region. So
the ESV says, Son of man, set your face toward the southland and preach against the south, and the prophecy of the land toward Negev.
Yeah, so Teman, we see it elsewhere. It's basically just a city in the middle of Edom.
Yeah.
So the main it's like almost directly south of Jerusalem if you look at a map. And so here he's basically saying, look to the south, because remember he's in Babylon. Look to the south, look towards Jerusalem, and again every instance of Negev here just means like south. And so there's like, is it 3 instances where he says Negev?
Probably. 46, 47.
It's at least twice.
Yeah.
So there's like this south and south, but he doesn't explain where in the south. He just says, look to the south and say this.
Yeah.
And we see that there is this forest land. And so I would say in this parable, or this like metaphor, there is this forest in the south.
Yeah.
He says there's going to be this wildfire essentially it's going to burn up. And he says that every green tree as well as every dry tree is going to burn. And that's pretty much the entire thing. It's just the flame will not be quenched. And the idea is every tree is going to be burned down. There isn't any that are going to escape the flame.
And we know that Yahweh did it.
Yeah, and the Yahweh did it specifically. So it isn't just like a random wildfire.
Yeah.
And the people are saying, is he not just speaking in parables? And if I'm reading this right, I would assume that means they're concerned and they probably know what he's saying, but they're just kind of hoping it's not what they think. But before you.
Well, I think the idea is that, to me, it seems like it's almost like disbelief.
Like disbelief.
Yeah, that's why he's like God. Like they're not even listening to me. They think I'm just like making stuff up. Like there's like they just think I'm just telling parables that they have to guess at. It's like,
okay, so you don't think that they like get what he's laying down?
No. I think that they might get it. I just think that it's even whether they get it or not. I think it's just the idea that they're dismissing him because they're just being like, oh, he's just telling like he's just talking all confusing. That's kind of how I'm like.
That's probably a better way to put it because later on they're going to do the same thing with the next like parable thingy that he's going to do. They kind of like dismiss it as like worthless.
And in a way, they're like, oh, God would never do this to us.
Yeah.
That might be part of it too.
I was gonna say it wasn't actually. I thought it was disbelief what David said, but I think now it's actually. I interpret it as like them just like not having the ears to hear, like being confused about.
Well, it's kind of both, yeah. Like
so that could have.
They're dismissing because they don't have ears to hear.
Yeah.
Right. But one last thing before we move on, just because I don't have time in this, we probably need to go faster. But okay, yeah.
First Peter moment.
Yeah, so really quickly, one last thing that's probably worth mentioning is what does it mean by dry tree and green tree? Most likely.
Life and death.
Well, dry tree would be a tree that's like away from water, and green tree would be a tree that's close to water. I'm assuming, right? Like
yeah,
water?
and I guess also in the sense of like a fire, it's like one burns up really easily. And
yes.
It's like more resistant to it.
So the idea is that the fire is just going to be blazing because it's burning up everything.
Yeah.
Like it's just like it's not. Yeah, because usually dry wood is what you use for a fire, whereas
it's to show.
It doesn't take a whole lot of fire to burn it up.
Yeah.
Whereas
strong.
But okay, so we get what's going on with this
yes.
supposed parable. Okay, we're gonna move on, and we're gonna see things are gonna get a lot more serious.
All right.
And the word of Yahweh came to me.
Real quick. Sorry. I think that also like the thing is just when he says is he not speaking parables? I think it's because he's speaking far more literally than they understand.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because like he's literally talking about like actual destruction that's going to take place, and they're dismissing it as just like, oh, is he not speaking parables? And he's like, God, they just don't get it. Like this is like literal life or death we're talking about. Anyways, that's another way to interpret it. Anyways, sorry, back to you.
Oh, you're good. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, so again, this is like now they're going to respond to the question. Son of man, set your face towards Jerusalem and speak, dripping out words against the sanctuaries and prophesy against the land of Israel. And say to the land of Israel, thus says Yahweh, behold, I am against you, and I will bring out my sword from its sheath, and cut off from you the righteous and the wicked. Because I will cut off from you the righteous and the wicked, therefore my sword will go out from its sheath against all flesh from south to north. Thus all flesh will know that I, Yahweh, have brought out my sword from its sheath, and it will not return to its sheath again. Now as for you, son of man, groan with breaking heart and bitter grief, groan in their sight. And it will be that when they say to you, why do you groan? You shall say, because of the report that is coming. And every heart will melt, all hands will fall limp, every spirit will faint, and all knees will be weak as water. Behold, it is coming, and it will happen, declares Lord Yahweh. Again the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, prophesy and say, thus says the Lord. Say, a sword sharpened and also polished, sharpened to make a slaughter, polished to flash like lightning. Or shall we rejoice in the scepter of my son? It despises every tree. It is given to be polished, that it may be seized by the hand. The sword is sharpened and polished, to give it into the hand of the one who kills. Cry out and wail, son of man, for it is against my people. It is against the princes of Israel. They are delivered over to the sword with my people. Therefore slap your thigh, for there is a testing. And what if even the scepter which the sword despises will be no more, declares Lord Yahweh. You therefore, son of man, prophesy and strike your hands together, and let the sword be doubled the third time, the sword for the slain. It is the sword for the great one slain, which surrounds them, that their hearts may melt, and many will be stumbling blocks at all their gates. I have given the glittering sword. It is made for striking like lightning. It is wrapped up in readiness for slaughter. Show yourself sharp, go to the right, set yourself, go to the left, wherever your edge is appointed. And I will also strike my hands together, and I will cause my wrath to be at rest. I, Yahweh, have spoken. Okay. So how does God answer the elders?
He's like, you think this is a parable? Let me spell it out for you.
All right.
He says, scratch Timon, scratch to the south, turn to Jerusalem. And you know what? Forget the imagery of trees and fire. I'm coming with a sword. And everybody's going to die. The righteous and the wicked, right? I'm assuming the righteous and the wicked are the trees.
Yeah.
Right? To where the it almost like comes back to like Psalm 1. You know, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. He shall be like a tree planted by streams of water, who does not wither. Well, under God's sword, he's going to wither. Right? So he's coming for, like, and then the wicked man, the evil man is like, you know, in a desolate area.
Mm-hmm.
And so God's like, I'm coming for both. Like, that's the meaning of it. To where it's like, it's not even quite a parable. It's more just a metaphor.
Yeah.
And it's like,
so will they get
like,
back?
I think the idea is like, they were thinking, like, they were just dismissing it, being like, oh, he's just talking in riddles. And Ezekiel's like, God, they're just not listening, because this is not hard to understand. And God's like, fair enough. Let's spell it out to them. Like, let's just, you know, this isn't like the, you know, some like Jesus' parables are very confusing sometimes. This one is like, no, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And so,
you know, it was like, first it had like Taman, Negev, or like south. And now it's saying the sanctuaries, the land of Israel. To where, it's like, he's like being, let me be clear. When I said these words like generally, but I'm talking about Jerusalem. I'm talking about, you know, the land of Israel.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that he even points out the sanctuary too is the idea that the temple will be destroyed.
That's true.
Like, it's like, this is going to be a total annihilation. It's not just the people leaving the land or being killed. It's the city is leveled.
Yeah. And as like a quick question, so there's not like necessarily a perfect answer to this, because I think that we just have to like let the text be the text.
Yes.
But this is worth mentioning, I would say. So here we talk about how both the wicked and the righteous are going to both suffer because of, like, they're going to both suffer to the sword. Whereas earlier we had chapter 18 say that God was going to deal with each person individually, and then back in chapter, I think it was 9 or 10, where the people in the temple vision, they went out and like marked people's foreheads that were groaning over the abominations. They got spared being killed. Why, like,
well,
one might be tempted to say there's a contradiction there, but obviously there's not. But like,
kind of the way I read it is like, let's say hypothetically Sodom and Gomorrah had maybe, you know, 5 or 10 righteous people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the city still got destroyed. Then, even if God, you know, did spare those 10 people in the city, then they would still suffer because their town got destroyed. That's maybe I may be going a little literal with it, but that's how.
If this, I don't know what your interpretation is, but off the top of my head, if this were a different book, I might land at a different interpretation, because a lot of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, doesn't really focus a lot on like the future resurrection.
Yeah, after.
But Ezekiel does, right? Later on in Ezekiel, there's going to be like the whole idea of like, can these dead bones live?
Yeah.
And you got like the Valley of Dry Bones, to where Ezekiel is going to talk about like this future like eternal kingdom where like there's going to be something like after death.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think that it might almost be intentional that you're like, as a reader, you're supposed to feel like there's a contradiction.
Yeah, like you're wrestling through this.
Yeah, because it's like again, we've been kind of going through this a little bit slower, but if you're just reading through the text, I mean, chapter 18 is only not that long ago, right? And he says, the soul who sins will die, and the righteous are going to live. But now he's like, no, the righteous and the wicked are going to die. And you're like, hold on. And so there's really a few options here. He could just be speaking hyperbolically, right? And it could be almost like when you're in like the book of Joshua, and he says, go and utterly annihilate the Canaanites or something like that. And it says they went and did it, and then a few pages later, like, those people are walking around, right? To where it's like, it could be hyperbolic, and he's just saying, I'm going for everybody, right? Righteous and wicked, even though maybe he doesn't literally mean the righteous. But I think there is also the possibility that this is forcing you to reinterpret chapter 18, to where it's saying, well, no, in this moment, there might be righteous people who do fall by the sword, but their fate will not ultimately be death.
Yeah.
Right? And it almost might be setting up the tension later on in Ezekiel, whenever like he says like, "Son of man, can these bones live?" And Ezekiel just says, "Lord, you know." Right? It's like Ezekiel's like, you're the one who knows, and like Ezekiel's like, I'm just the watchman, right? I'm just here for your message, and like it's almost like the message is like preparing you for the idea of like resurrection.
Yeah.
Right? To where it's like you heard the righteous are going to live, and now he says, I'm coming for the righteous too, and you're like, wait, what? And specifically in this passage, the emphasis is like the sword, the sword, the sword. Like it's very clearly talking about death, 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 death. Mm-hmm. And it's like, but I thought the righteous wasn't supposed to die. And it's like, they're not going to. But you said you're going to kill him with the sword. Correct. And like the only possible, like, it almost like reminds me of like the tension in Genesis 22. When like God says, go sacrifice your son, your only son, Isaac, who you love. And as Abraham's doing this, he's probably thinking like, but you said that through Isaac, like the nation would come and like everybody would be blessed. And so like there's this seeming contradiction. And that's why, like, the author of Hebrews says that Abraham concluded that maybe God would resurrect Isaac, right? And, like, you know, towards, like, he's trying to figure out, like, how is this possible? Well, maybe death isn't the end of the story, you know? And so, like, that's kind of, like, the conclusion I'm arriving at.
Yeah.
But you, again, you could, like, if you don't want to go there, you could just say he's being hyperbolic here.
Yeah.
I was going to say something. All those are nice. I think the second... thing that David pointed out, like the latter thing, might actually be more true than being hyperbolic, because it would show that God is, you know, I mean, I think it makes more sense to me, but anyway, my interpretation before all that was simply just like when he said in verse 4, because I will cut off from you both the righteous and the wicked. I actually interpreted that at first as the righteous being separated from the wicked, which would lead to the idea of the righteous being spared, which wouldn't be completely contradictory to David's, again, latter point.
Well, but the word cut off there would be referring to death.
Well, yeah.
And then it says, therefore my sword will go out from its sheath against all flesh.
Okay,
so the idea is all die.
Okay, I see that now, but I mean, I'm not saying that completely destroys my point, because I think it supports it in a different way now, because essentially speaking, it's like separation, you know, not physically, but like in a different way. Does that make sense, or no?
Maybe, but I think in the point right here he's making is that while we would naturally expect a separation between the righteous and the wicked, he's saying, I'm going to treat them like one and the same. And they're both going to meet the sword.
Yeah.
I see.
Keep in mind, this is related to the previous forest and fire thing, to where like, in a sense, this is kind of explaining it, or like clarifying what's going on with the forest and the fire, to where in the forest and fire, it was like a wildfire where no tree escaped, where every tree got burned down.
Okay.
To where, if you make that, like, it's pretty clear that he's talking about, like, the trees are people and the sword is the fire, where they're all getting cut down.
And also, even on the idea of like this referring to the Negev, like I think that there might be a reason why it's translated as Negev before, because Negev does mean south, but in particular it refers to like the desert region in the south. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea of there being a forest in the middle of the desert is supposed to be like this like very special, almost like oasis-like place in the middle of the desert. And so I think that could almost like help explain. He's clearly referring to Jerusalem, right? Like this is in the southern region, but Jerusalem is like this like very special place in the eyes of God.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, but that actually probably makes more sense to be honest. So ultimately, I think no matter what, it's just the reason I brought it up is because I think that as Christians, we don't even question things like that, to where we would just read through and like, oh yeah, well it's because like the righteous people, they're gonna get resurrected. Where like the Old Testament in general has very little to say about the afterlife, and so I think it's just worth, when you're reading this as if you're an Israelite, like they wouldn't have that automatic conclusion. Yeah. To where if you're an Israelite reading this in Babylon, you're gonna be a little confused. Where you're like what David said, like, but wait, so the righteous will be spared, but also the righteous aren't going to be spared. Yeah. And I think first of all, it's probably just good to never like put God in a box, to where like God doesn't have to follow a systematic theology to begin with. So like we oftentimes want to, and so like that's part of what makes us like think he's like contradicting himself. Yeah. But was I gonna say?
That's why I was saying that if this weren't Ezekiel or even like Daniel, I would probably not come to like the possible resurrection conclusion, because that would be a little bit just a different focus than the Old Testament generally has. But Ezekiel and Daniel are books. I mean, they're written around the same time period too, to where like this is something that is beginning to show up in the thought of the Jewish people, which even makes sense, because what's happening to them on a large scale is that their nation is being killed, and God promises He's going to resurrect it, right? To where, like literally, like Israel and Judah are going to be wiped out for a while, and then they're going to come back. And so the nation is dying and resurrecting, and so it makes sense that at this time period in exile, you also see the idea of like individual personal resurrection beginning to pop up.
Yeah.
But even then, it's a slow introduction to where it's not anything like you read in the New Testament, where Paul's just like, let me explain to you the bodily resurrection from the dead. Like, instead it's almost like a mystery being introduced, to where you're like, wait a second, how are these things true at the same time? And it's building up to what you're going to see later on in Ezekiel.
The spirit world works very interestingly.
Yeah, and probably don't need to, like, I know we could go a lot longer, like a lot slower through it, but we probably need to pick the pace up. One last thing I'll say is that just again picturing what's going on here, like as he tells Ezekiel to like go and like just like being like groaning very loudly around people to get their attention, to where like they're asking like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. And then even the verse 15 or no more 15 16. I think in Hebrew it's like much more of like a obvious like alliteration going on, kind of like there was that one verse in Isaiah where it was like back and forth, like all these like formation commands. It kind of seems like he's doing some sort of like a performance, to where I think even like one of the commentaries I was reading was like it talks about him kind of performing in front of people, to where he's like kind of singing like a little song almost, where he's almost like repurposing a battle hymn. But again, the idea is when it talks about the sword here, it's like let the sword. I think it's like thrice the sword for the slain, and it talks about this like sword turning. The idea is like it's not letting people escape, to where it is like if people are trying to escape, it's kind of engaging, trying to guard. Like it's almost like a reverse of what happens in Genesis 3 when they're kicked out of the garden, to where there's a sword that turns every way to guard the way to the tree of life, but now they're being contained inside Eden, and the tree of life is like on the outside, to where they're being guarded away from like the tree of life on the outside, in a sense, as far as the imagery goes there.
I do love the imagery of just poor Ezekiel just like groaning. Like it's almost supposed to be like, obviously it's not comedic, but the idea that he's like going around groaning and people like he's supposed to be doing it in such a manner that it draws attention to him, to where people are like, dude, what are you groaning about? And he's like, have you not heard? Like to me, it actually like calls to mind, if you fast forward, like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, in the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus like walks up to them and they're like very clearly just like not happy, and he's like, guys, what's wrong? And they're like, have you not heard? Like the best dude ever got murdered a few days ago, and we're like upset about it. And he's like, oh, Jesus? No, he's alive. But it's almost like the same idea where he's intentionally moping around, like, and it's to draw attention to it, so that people ask why, and it's so that he can explain. Did you not hear what's going to happen in Jerusalem? Everybody's going to die. Everybody. He's kind of basically being asked to be like that crazy guy walking down the road with like the what were they called? Like the signs that are like on like
the doomsday things.
Yeah, the doomsday guys who like they got like the signs on their like shoulders being like the end is nigh. Like that's basically what Ezekiel's being asked to do here.
And he does say like strike your hands together, and then he says strike your thigh. So it is almost like him being like, oh, like
he's literally just supposed to be an insane man going around being like, the end is coming, the sword, and like he's like doing like this battle chant, and it's like once, twice, everybody's dead. Like it's like a very much like they're supposed to almost think he's insane, but it's the grief that is driving him insane. Yeah. And so it's I don't know, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Actually, I guess one more thing.
All right.
Verse 13, just because it kind of reminds me of like at the end of chapter 19, where it talked about like there would be no like thick branch where the scepter would rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but it says, and what if even the scepter, which the sword despises, will be no more? And there's been kind of this theme throughout of like God is going to kind of cut off the Davidic dynasty. And so the question here is kind of like, what happens? Like, that's probably something worth like wrestling through. Again, if you're an Israelite reading this, the question is like, okay, well, if the dynasty is being cut off, like, what's going to happen with that? Because that's something they had to wrestle through, because even when they come back from exile, they don't have a king.
Well, and that's especially challenging because if you just consider like the nature of the different covenants, like the Torah covenant was conditional, to where like them being kicked out of the land and going into exile and stuff like that, that's all stuff that they should have expected, right? Because he literally laid it out in Torah. He said, if you do these things, I'm going to kick you out. But the covenant he made to David was unconditional.
Yeah.
And he said, like, hey, you're gonna have a king who sits on the throne forever. And even if you go earlier than that, to the time period of Jacob, he says to Judah, the scepter shall not depart from Judah.
Yeah.
And so you've got like these two unconditional promises from God that there's going to be this scepter that eternally exists in Judah and from David. And then now the question is, this is a test. What happens if the scepter is gone?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do with that? Because, if you're exiled from the land, well, sure, that's just God fulfilling his promise. But now the king is gone, and it almost looks like God's abandoned you. And that's the test. Like, what do you do with that information?
Right.
And I would argue that, again, this points towards resurrection, right? To where it's like the nation dies and is resurrected. The kingship dies and is resurrected. But ironically, the resurrection is going to take a lot longer, right? The land is going to be, they're going to go back after 70 years. But the kingship isn't going to come back until there's a child born from a virgin. And it's kind of just interesting. Like that's an interesting question posed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's more I could say, but we probably need to move on. Is there anything else that stuck out to y'all, or do y'all want to comment on? Because there is verses that we didn't really discuss. But
just the end of it, he says he's going to be the one who strikes his hands together, and he will cause his wrath to be at rest.
Right.
So he's going to just unleash upon them.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
It's also just worth, mainly just because of modern things that I hear certain Christians saying, the idea that like God does not send his wrath against his own people. Well, in this instance, he does. I see that being like a big thing, and like whenever people talk about like stuff, we don't have to get into it, but tied to like Revelation and stuff like that, people make a big deal like God would never send his wrath against his people. It's like, well, that's what he's quite literally doing to the people of Judah. So just be.
But that's the Old Testament.
Yeah, that's what they'd say.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
But okay, we can go ahead and move on then.
All right.
I'll read through the rest of the chapter because it's kind of.
No, and kind of add on to that. You're like, oh, the God of the New Testament and the Old Testament are different, and there's a million reasons why that's wrong. But
Right.
Yeah. Okay, move on. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Now as for you, son of man, make 2 ways for the sword of the king of Babylon to come. Both of them will go out of one land. And make a signpost. Make it at the head of the way to the city. You shall mark a way for the sword to come to Rabbah of the sons of Ammon, and to Judah, and to fortify Jerusalem. For the king of Babylon stands at the parting of the way, at the head of the 2 ways, to use divination. He shakes the arrows. He asks the household idols. He looks at the liver. And to his right hand came the divination, Jerusalem, to set battering rams, to open the mouth for killing, to lift up the voice with a shout of war, to set battering rams against the gates, to cast up ramps, to build a siege wall. And it will be to them like a worthless divination in their eyes. They have sworn solemn oaths. But he brings iniquity to remembrance, that they may be seized. Therefore thus says Lord Yahweh, because you have made your iniquity to be remembered, and that your transgressions are uncovered, so that in all your deeds your sins appear, because you have come to remembrance, you will be seized with the hand. And you, O slain wicked one, the prince of Israel, whose day has come, in the time of the iniquity of the end. Thus says Lord Yahweh, remove the turban and take off the crown. This will no longer be the same. Make high that which is low, and make low that which is high. A ruin, a ruin, a ruin I will make it. This also will be no more until he comes to whom the legal judgment belongs, and I will give it to him. Now as for you, son of man, prophesy and say, Thus says Lord Yahweh, concerning the sons of Ammon, and concerning their reproach, and say, a sword is drawn, polished for the slaughter, to cause it to consume, that it may be like lightning. While they behold for you worthless visions, while they divide lies for you, to place you on the necks of the wicked who are slain, whose day has come, in the time of the iniquity of the end. Return it to its sheath. In the place where you were created, in the land of your origin, I will judge you. And I will pour out my indignation on you. I will blow on you with the fire of my fury, and I will give you into the hands of brutal men, craftsmen of destruction. You will be fuel for the fire. Your blood will be in the midst of the land. You will not be remembered, for I, Yahweh, have spoken. Okay, so we start off with this kind of... This is similar more to like the beginning of the book, to where he kind of has Ezekiel do these like little dioramas, is what it seems like to me. Do y'all understand what's going on at all here? I guess most specifically in those first like 5 verses, 18 through 22. What's going on with those verses?
I'm reading it right now.
Yeah, talking about King of Babylon, and he's saying like, make a way for the King of Babylon to come through and conquer.
Yeah.
It seems like is he being told to make like a fork in the road, like a
Yeah. So the way that I like am picturing it is that he's having them maybe like in the dirt.
yeah
It seems like he's drawing like a cross, like a not a crossroad, I guess, but like a fork, to
Yeah.
where if you can picture like having a fork, and then it's almost like a signpost where it's like Jerusalem,
Yes.
Rabbah,
yeah
and the king of Babylon walks up to the path, like the crossroad, and he looks at it and goes, I guess the assumption is he's going to invade one or the other. The
Yeah.
question is, which one am I going to invade? And so,
That's kind of the idea that if you guys listen to me, I would have had him go to Rabbah.
well, so before that, so
you have the like he's like basically doing divination, like trying to decide like where do the gods want him to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So this is Ezekiel doing this. He's in front of the elders or
Yes.
the people of Israel in
Yeah.
Babylon. He is doing this little diorama of what's happening, like whether it's happening now or later, it doesn't matter. But he's doing this with King Nebuchadnezzar, like he's doing this diorama, and basically King Nebuchadnezzar is at this crossroad. He's like, am I going to invade Jerusalem or Rabbah, Ammon or Judah? And Nebuchadnezzar, because he's not a Jew, he's using like pagan ways to divinate.
To determine
And-
where the gods want him to go.
Yeah, and he chooses 3 different things that are pretty common. One is like he picks an arrow out of the quiver. There's a word for it, I forget, but it's like somethingology. But and then he has like this household idol that he like asked, and then he looks at a liver, which is like a pretty common thing with like soothsayers, like where they have like the animal liver they look at, and
Yeah.
they look for like a spot in it, and it like it's
Yeah.
supposed to like be a good or bad omen.
So,
And
does
so-
that have to do with blemish? Just wondering. Like, because I think there
No,
are
these
stories
are all
about
just
that.
pagan rituals.
Yeah,
that
these
they
are all-
used to-
yeah. Okay, I wasn't
Yeah.
paying attention to that part. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like this is like a Roman thing, like the haruspex. They
I
would
see.
like in like here like animal entrails being associated with like soothsaying and like divination is like it's like a time long thing.
Yeah.
Every culture pretty much does it. With,
And the idea is that he's being very thoughtful about this. Like he wants to know with absolute confidence which one to go to. He
Yeah.
isn't just doing one. He's checking and double checking, like using the arrows, using the idols, using the liver, and it's all going to point him in one direction.
yeah, and I don't know if it's assuming that like Ezekiel's also doing this as a demonstration, like in front of them, because it doesn't really say, but like it just says that like this is what Nebuchadnezzar's doing.
I would assume that he's playing the part.
But
of
I
the king.
would assume he's playing the
Yeah,
part.
like I doubt that he'd be able to get the actual king to show up and be like, "Hey, can you do this for me?" Like,
And there's not really a way to like draw it.
yeah,
And so, but yeah, so assumingly Ezekiel plays this out, and so Ezekiel is like picking the arrow out of the quiver. He does the household idol thing, and then he does the liver thing, and it says that it was like them, a worthless divination. And who is like them in this instance?
If I'm wrong about it being the people they were speaking to this whole book, then let me know.
I'm assuming that this is the people that Ezekiel's performing in front of.
I would assume so.
Yeah,
That's
to
what I
where
was
it's like
talking about. That's what I was
to
talking about.
where Nebuchadnezzar is doing this. He receives the answer, Jerusalem. That's where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And the people who are watching this are going to be like, yeah, right. Yeah, like, yeah, whatever. Even if the gods told him to go to Jerusalem, nothing's going to happen in Jerusalem. And Ezekiel's like, and that's why it says, but he brings iniquity to remembrance. And I'm assuming that he here is God, right?
I would assume so.
Or Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, I guess it could work like Nebuchadnezzar remembers what Jerusalem has done to him in the past by going down to Egypt.
Yeah, actually, I would assume it's that, because even the next verse says, God says, because you have made your iniquity to be remembered. And so I think the idea is that, like, they're making it be remembered by Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
And so that's why he chooses that direction. Yeah, and keep in mind, maybe, this as well as, like, the last chapter, Jerusalem's already been, like, basically invaded twice at this point. And both times, Jerusalem didn't get destroyed, and, you know, only a few people were taken. And so throughout all of this, just remember that it's easy for the people in Jerusalem as well as the people in Babylon to not think that Jerusalem's going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
Or that or in, like, the case of only the guilty are going to get taken, to where it's like the people who stay are the ones, like, they're innocent.
Yeah.
And so just keep that, like, in the back of your mind.
Okay.
But yeah, so and then God moves on. It says, "You slain wicked one, the Prince of Israel, whose day has come." Who's that probably referring to? It's not a trick question.
Okay, what verse is that?
Who's the Prince of
Verse
Israel?
25.
It says.
Is this referring to literally the king on the throne, or is it referring to like Jerusalem metaphorically as like the prince?
I guess it could be both. I mean, I was thinking the king,
That it's
though.
I don't know why.
So though I guess the king doesn't technically get killed.
Yeah.
Zedekiah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Well, unless this is still. Again, I'm trying to remember the timeline here. How far are we before the? Well, no, because the siege is already going. Like.
Yeah. So
I'm trying to think the timeline here.
So I guess the reason I was thinking this was the king is because of the next verses.
Right.
Because it says take off the turban, take off the crown.
Yeah. So what it seems like is this is all detailing like the end of the Davidic, like the dynasty as they know it, where it says take the turban off, take off the crown. They will no longer be the same. Make high that which is low, low that which is high. So the dynasty is being brought down low.
Yeah.
A ruin I'll make it, which that sounds more like the city. This will also be no more until he comes to whom the legal judgment belongs to, I will give it to him. So it seems like it's saying that the dynasty will no longer be around until someone shows up and he will give it to him.
It's crazy how much of Ezekiel relies on Genesis 49. Like, because again, like it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, or the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. And the word Shiloh means he to whom it belongs. And so it's like literally the scepter will not depart until he to whom it belongs arrives.
Mm-hmm.
And so now Ezekiel is saying the scepter is going to depart from Judah until the one to whom it belongs shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like he's retelling Genesis 49, like that promise, but he's inserting a gap of time in between. Where there is a time where it does depart from Judah, but just not forever. And it's like, I don't know, that's interesting to me, because it's like,
leave, by the way.
okay, no problem.
See you guys.
All
Bye.
right, see ya. Have a good one.
Two.
But I can see it, like, the reason I just find that interesting is because it's very similar to, like, I don't know, like this would be another instance where there is a gap of time where God is not doing anything that was not previously explained before. You know what I mean? To where it's like, whenever you go to Genesis 49, it doesn't ever talk about the scepter being away from Judah for a little bit. It just says it won't depart until Shiloh comes, which would be like the Messiah, right?
Yeah.
And then now Ezekiel's saying, oh, well, there's going to be a time period where the Davidic monarchy just isn't around. And that's kind of similar to what we would say about like Jesus when like scriptures talk about the Messiah showing up and establishing his eternal kingdom. And it's like, oh, well, there is going to be this gap of time in between the Messiah showing up and the eternal kingdom. Like,
yeah, that's true.
And it's interesting that they both have to do with like the Messiah's arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. I just find that intriguing that there's like a...
Yeah, and both kind of are revolving around like Israel's disobedience.
Yes.
To where like, it's almost like that is like part of the punishment to where like these exile wasn't supposed to happen, but then because of like Israel's disobedience, God delayed that.
Yeah.
And then when Jesus came, when Israel disobeyed and they killed him, as a result, that's like almost it could be like punishment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just an interesting direct parallel because it's also God is going to the Gentiles in this part, right? And this is like whenever you go to Daniel, like this is like the initial time of the Gentiles.
It's true.
And then the way that like the Gospel of Matthew ends, all authority has been given to me. Go make disciples of the nations. So it's like
That's true.
it's an interesting parallel towards like there's the time of the Gentiles in between each one. Anywho,
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense.
I just that kind of sidetracked me a little bit.
Oh no, you're fine. I mean, I thought that was interesting. That's probably okay. So the last section, we can probably go ahead and like close it pretty soon. The last section, 28 through 32, kind of changes gears a bit. What happens in those verses? Because remember, we just talked about how Nebuchadnezzar decided not to go to Ammon; he went to Judah instead. And so I'm assuming this is in response to that, to where now he's turning to Ammon, and he's saying, what does he basically say to Ammon?
Seems like they're going to be destroyed as well. Huh?
Seems like it. So it's concerning their approach. So I assume, again, going back to the whole like path, the crossroads thing. I'm assuming it's because both nations rebelled in some sort, and so some people would say it's that he was deciding who to invade first. And so, in the same way that Jerusalem isn't going to escape judgment and no one inside will, I think the idea is Ammon shouldn't like. He's telling Ammon don't think that you're not going to get judged too. So they're not going to escape as well. But yeah. And I guess that's pretty much what the verses are saying. Is there anything that sticks out to you, or anything y'all want to comment on in those verses?
What is verse 30 when it's talking about like return to the sheath? In the place where you were created in the land of your origin, I will judge you.
I was curious about that. Return to its sheath in the place you were created. Because I guess returning a sword to its sheath is like, I don't know if it's comparing that to the land of their origin. Because we haven't really, like, the last time we mentioned a sheath was the at the beginning of the chapter when it said it would never return to its sheath.
Yeah. So I'm looking it up. It looks like for a while, people speculated that Ammon had been destroyed by the Babylonians, but archaeology has like suggested that it just prospered as like a Babylonian province during that time. To where like I'm wondering if like when it says return to its sheath, is it saying they deserve to be destroyed? But it's like to where it's like he wasn't going to put up the sword for Jerusalem, but he is for Ammon. That was like a way I was trying to interpret it, so that's why I looked it up. Because I was wanting to see what fate did Ammon actually experience.
I see.
The sword is drawn, polished for the slaughter, to cause it to consume, that it might be like lightning, while they behold for you worthless visions, while they divine lies for you. Who is that for? Like the
I mean, it seems to be talking about Ammon, despite we haven't really heard much about Ammon, but
yeah.
I mean, I guess they would also have diviners.
Like, I'm wondering if, like, this is God saying, like, your judgment is coming, but not yet. Like, where he's like, a sword is drawn for them, but then he says, return to its sheath, in the place where you were created in the land of your origin, I will judge you. Like, the idea of, like, I will judge you, just not now.
Okay.
I don't know. I could be wrong there. There's just, like, something about the language of it's kind of confusing me.
Yeah.
For it says, I will pour out my indignation on you. I will blow on you with the fire of my fury. I will give you into the hand of brutal men, craftsmen of destruction. You will be fuel for the fire. Your blood will be in the midst of the land. You will be remembered for I Yahweh have spoken. To where it's almost like it's saying, like, I'm going to do this, and I won't forget, but not yet. Like, and again, I could be wrong there, but, like, just the imagery for some reason of returning to the sheath, it says, like, the sword is drawn. You deserve this. And then, like, put the sword up.
Oh, I
like,
see.
you know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm just trying to figure out, like, what it's.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really sure, to be honest, but that could make sense.
Let's go to our friend ChatGPT. I know it's not the best, but let's just see. Quick summary, what it thinks it's saying.
I just get the same question multiple times to see how consistent the answers
Yeah.
are.
So I didn't look at the Hebrew to see if there was like a weird thing there, but
If we were trying to wrap up, I would like to pull out like actual commentaries and stuff. But
yeah, for sure.
The Ammonites apparently believed they'd escaped Babylonian judgment and would profit from Judah's downfall. God declares they too will face his wrath.
I guess it could just be the idea of like the sword left the sheath to attack like Judah, and I mean, I don't know if that would work, but like the sheath could be like Ammon itself, to where it's saying the sword was going to eventually come back to the sheath, and that's like their origin. Like the sword's origin is the sheath.
So it's suggesting. Let me check other translations. It's saying that maybe the return to its sheath part is supposed to be like a rhetorical question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so other translations, well, I guess it's really just the King James. The King James is the only one that I can see that translates it as a question, but it says, shall I return it to its sheath? In which case it's a rhetorical question that's like, no.
No, yeah.
But all the other ones say, now return the sword to its sheath. Cause it to return to its sheath. So that's interesting to me. I'm going to have to look into that. I mean, it's not like the end of the world, but
Yeah.
the language is intriguing to me just because everything else is judgment, judgment, judgment. But then it says the return to the sheath thing. I'm like, what the heck is up with that?
Especially because with Judah, it was specifically that it would never return to its sheath.
Yes.
And that was but therefore my sword will go out from its sheath against all flesh. It will not return. Well, I guess it says, I brought out my sword from my sheath. It will not return again.
Yeah. And so, that's why, again, it's just tripping me up just because the language of returning a sword to a sheath is the idea of stopping the judgment.
Yeah.
And then all the other language is like future. Like, I will do this, to where I'm like, I could see it to where it's like he's saying, I'm sparing you for now, but I'll get to you later, right? To where it's like, all because Nebuchadnezzar is heading towards Jerusalem doesn't mean I forgot about Ammon. Like, don't worry, I'm going to come back. It's almost like in Habakkuk, where Habakkuk's like, what the heck? Why are you sending the Babylonians after us? And God's like, oh, don't worry. I'm going to send somebody after the Babylonians too. But right now, my priority is judging my people. To where I could see that being like it could make sense why there's all of a sudden an oracle here. Because it's like you pointed out, we haven't really been talking about Ammon at all. And so it's kind of weird to be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to judge Ammon too. You're like, wait, why? But it makes sense if it's just like in the context of him like doing this like little like lived out like thing. He's said, okay, Nebuchadnezzar's deciding between Jerusalem and Ammon. He's chosen Jerusalem. And so now in the back of everybody's head, they're wondering, well, what the heck's going to happen to Ammon? He's like, don't worry, God's going to judge them, just not yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I could see that being like it's almost like he's just like, he's got to at least resolve it because if not, everybody's going to be wondering, like, what happened to Ammon? So
that is true.
Like, I could see that kind of being the case, but I don't know.
Okay, well, that's...
All right.
Any other comments, questions, concerns, fun facts, allegories, anecdotes?
I am concerned that we don't study the book of Ezekiel enough and that it's negatively affecting the church. What do we do about it?
More! Okay.
Keep shoving it in their faces.
Yeah.
Keep quoting from Ezekiel the most controversial parts. The real graphic details.
Yeah.
So I want to pray us out?
I can do it. Lord, I thank you for bringing us all here today. I thank you for Sean and his willingness to lead us through your word. I thank you for guiding him, and I praise you, Lord, for just giving us the opportunity to freely gather here and to go through your word. And I pray that you will give us humility as we go through it, so that we continue to grow in knowledge, but also represent you well. And I pray that you will convict our hearts, so that we aren't simply growing in knowledge, but we are drawing nearer to you and coming to understand you better and understanding how to best live for you in this world. Help us be part of the solution this world needs. Help us live for you. Help us love like you do. And may you be exalted through our lives. We love you, Lord, and we praise you. To whom we pray. Amen.